Hello, Toads and Toadettes. If you are a Pokemon fan, you know that Pokemon has not had it so good on the Nintendo Switch. But in 2022, that has changed. With the release of Pokemon Legends Arceus, it gave a lot of Pokemon fans a lot of hope for the future, as it really felt like a transition into a new phase of Pokemon. And here we are in late 2022 with the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. Today I want to go over what Game Freak did good with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and what they did good with Pokemon Sword and Shield, to show how much better Game Freak did with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Pokemon Sword and Shield. First, let's start off with some positives for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The first biggie is the open world. It's the first truly open world game. Pokemon Legends Arceus was an open area game, meaning that there's multiple areas that are open, but the whole entire game is not open, where you can go anywhere you want at any time. There was locks on some areas that you needed to do other stuff to pass, and in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, it is fully open world. You could go to the hardest gym first thing if you really wanted to. Yes, you'd get destroyed, but you could tackle any of these gyms in any order, and that is just a really cool feeling to be able to just go around the Paldea region. It's an amazing feeling, and it's something very fresh and new for Pokemon. The open world mechanic in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is basically the foundation for everything else in the game, as it gave Game Freak a lot of room to maneuver around and just work with different other things, and this is just such a better way of handling a brand new 3D environment Pokemon game than Sword and Shield did. They kept it with the same thing of just being linear paths, it was routes, besides for one area that I will get to when we talk about Sword and Shield later. But Pokemon Scarlet and Violet just handled this basis of the game way better. Next, I want to talk about how they used every single Pokemon type for main story events. Usually, there's only 8 gyms in a Pokemon game. That was with Sword and Shield, and that means only 8 types are going to get featured. But in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as they used the Victory Road as the 8 gyms, along with the Elite Four, allowed for 8 Pokemon types to be used there. Then they introduced 2 new roads needed to complete the story, which was honestly just really fun to be able to tackle all 3 of these paths at different orders and different times, and just seeing how all 3 stories progress was really satisfying and really refreshing. But then you have 5 Titans, which gives you 5 more Pokemon types, and then the 5 more Team Star bases, which gives you the last remaining 5 Pokemon types. This game used every single Pokemon type that there is in the game as main story points, and I just really loved that, and I thought it was just really cool how every type got its chance in this game, and it was just really cool to see everything get featured. Next, we're going to go into the gimmick of Scarlet and Violet. There was a gimmick in Sword and Shield, which I'll talk about later, and how they handled it way better in Scarlet and Violet, and that is the ability to Terastallize. This is pretty similar to the gimmick they use in Sword and Shield, but it is just handled way better. In this game, each Pokemon has its single and only Terra type. This can basically change a whole entire strategy of a battle. You can fake a lot of people out with this, throwing in a Pokemon. They might have a Pokemon that's super effective against that Pokemon, but then you Terastallize to a whole entire different Terra type, and now their moves basically have no effect against it. And not only this, but whatever Terra type you are, if you have a move of the same type, it would actually do extra damage. So honestly, Terastallizing is going to play very strategically, and finding the best Pokemon with their best Terra types is going to be a deciding factor in a lot of battles, and it's honestly just way more unique and also cooler looking. I mean, it looks dope than what the gimmick was in Sword and Shield, which we'll get to later. Terastallizing was a lot of fun in this game. Next, I want to talk about the story and the cut scenes. This story was so much better than Sword and Shield's story. Sword and Shield's story was kind of just a basic, generic Pokemon story, or just story in general, that you kind of come to expect. The only thing cool was that you were basically the rival to Hop, instead of him being the rival to you, even though it comes vice versa to some people, but that's kind of what I grasped in that game. But besides that, literally nothing really interesting is happening. It's just a get stronger and beat Leon kind of game, and that was basically it with the story. But in this game, they actually made a good story, as you have 3 different stories that all end up combining into one, which is just an amazing way to handle the story. First, you have the Victory Road, which follows you and Nimona, as she basically just gives you encouragement to complete all the gyms and defeat the Elite Four. This story is obviously what you come to expect from a Pokemon game, but it was really cool how Nimona only used her full strength when you became the champion, and that she really was just encouraging you along the whole entire way. And while it is the most generic out of all the 3 of stories, I think it was overall just a pretty satisfying experience, as every time you got a gym badge, she would congratulate you, and she would actually progressively get stronger, just like another Pokemon game, your rival gets stronger. But I like how they handled the Victory Road. Next, there was Starfall Street, which every Pokemon game does have its team, like of other people that are just basically a rebel team. And this was Team Star, but they took it to a way better place in this game. There's 5 bases that you have to take down with the leaders, and the story follows you getting on a mission with this other unknown being. And I won't spoil anything. Don't worry, this is a spoiler free. I won't say what happens at the end. And you're basically just working together to take out all 5 of the Team Star bases, as the bosses will have to give up their role as boss if they do get defeated, and you're basically just trying to take out Team Star. I think this was an interesting way to take the Rebel team on, and it was actually pretty fun, as every time you would beat a boss, you would actually see their backstory, and the ending was pretty fun as well. Like I said, I won't spoil anything, as this game is pretty new, but I will say I did enjoy Starfall Street. And then finally, you could say the most important one is Path of Legends. This follows you and the Professor's Child on your path to defeating all 5 of the Titan Pokemon to collect these healing items that will help heal their Pokemon. Along with this, it'll also power up your legendary Pokemon depending on what game you actually played, giving it more abilities, and eventually leading you to Area 0, where all the paths meet together and come to an end. Lastly, I'm going to skim over 2 other topics, and that is difficulty and multiplayer. This game is actually not that easy. I'm not going to say it was hard. It's nowhere near being like extremely hard as an RPG, but it is way better difficulty than Sword and Shield or something like X and Y, which was too easy. I feel like Sword and Shield wasn't too easy like X and Y, but it wasn't as hard as Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Not saying they are hard though. This is the right difficulty for a Pokemon game, I would say, as you still need to take time to level up your Pokemon. You can't just go from gym to gym just destroying everything. And since there is so much story points, like I was saying, your Pokemon actually do progress as the story does progress. So you're not too often having to spend a grind session. It's just more towards the end of the game that you might have to do that. But either way, doing Terra Raid battles is a very good way to get XP, or the Chansey method. It's not too tedious to get XP in this game. Overall, they handled the difficulty pretty well. And also, the multiplayer was pretty good. Like I was saying, Terra Raid battles are as fun as ever, as it kind of was a thing in Sword and Shield, which I'll get to. And also, being able to just run around Paldea with your friends is also a pretty cool experience. Now we get to what Sword and Shield did good. So if they did do something good just like Scarlet and Violet, but if Scarlet and Violet did it better, I will not say it. And there is only one thing I say Sword and Shield did good, and that is the wild area, because there's nothing you can really compare this with. In Scarlet and Violet, I think the wild area was good, as it's the only open area in the game. This is basically where you and other people online or your friends can hang out and do max raid battles. But the only thing is, like I said, Scarlet and Violet is open world, but I'm not going to compare it to the wild area. That's kind of unfair. But the wild area was fun, and I would say it was honestly the best thing about Sword and Shield, and what is really the only reason I was still playing the game after I beat it, besides the Pokédex. But that is something they did pretty good there. But sadly, that is the only thing they did good there. Like I said, I was going to get to Sword and Shield's gimmick being Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing, and why I prefer Terastallizing over those two. I think it's kind of winky and weird how only certain Pokemons have a Gigantamax form and every other Pokemon just has a Dynamax form. And I also find it kind of weird how it just buffs up the moves and gives them different moves that are used on every Pokemon, and I just find that kind of not unique. And every time someone Gigantamaxes, you kind of already know what's going to happen. And when it comes to Terastallizing, when they Terastallize during the animation, you have no idea what the Terra type is going to be, and you're honestly kind of just either stressing out or just laughing at your enemies if you are Terastallizing, because it could switch up a whole entire battle. And when it comes to Gigantamaxing, it's not much interesting things are happening, and they could have handled it better. I feel like at least every Pokemon should have had a Gigantamax form. It would have been a lot of work, but it actually would have made this kind of fun. It's kind of stupid how some have Gigantamax forms and some only have Dynamax forms. I just feel like this was kind of not handled the best, and they could have done way better with the Dynamaxing. And now I want to go over the bad of both games, as they share pretty similar bad things. I already went over some bad things while I was talking about Scarlet and Violet, or as I was talking with Sword and Shield. But some things that they both share is not having national decks. They both started with 400 Pokemon, which is not even close. I think it's like half of the actual Pokemon in existence. It's especially disappointing from Scarlet and Violet's side, as we were mad at Sword and Shield for not having it, and you would expect them to listen to the community and put national decks in, but instead, even though they added more Pokemon, if Gen 9 wasn't a thing, they actually would have ended up having less than Sword and Shield. So it's pretty disappointing that national decks is not in both here or in either of these games. We don't know if it could be added to Scarlet and Violet, but it's for sure not coming to Sword and Shield. And lastly, the thing that these two games share that are pretty bad is the graphics and performance. The graphics, in my opinion, improved in Scarlet and Violet, but they are just not that good Obviously, Game Freak is not known for making games with the best graphics, but I mean, come on, you could have at least tried. And especially the performance, there was so much lag spikes. It was just a very laggy mess when this game came out. Luckily, there was some performance patches, so the game does run at least more decent, and it's better to play now, but it does get laggy at sometimes. Same thing with Sword and Shield. The games just don't have good graphics and don't have good performance. And there you have it. That was basically just a video going over why Game Freak did so much better with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet than Pokemon Sword and Shield. And obviously, both games have their flaws, but Scarlet and Violet has so much better pros to it than it does cons compared to Sword and Shield. Game Freak really outdid themselves with this game, as it's honestly my personal favorite Pokemon game right now. I hope they do more unique experiences like this. If you are going to get a Pokemon game on Switch, it's for sure going to be either Pokemon Scarlet or Pokemon Violet. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as subscribing is free and so is liking. Like I said, we're running very close to Christmas, and you guys have not gotten me a gift yet. So how about you clutch up Christmas by hitting the subscribe button, as it is free and it is like a Christmas present to me. I do have more Pokemon related and Nintendo related content on my channel, which I do recommend checking out. And on that note, guys, I'll see you in the next one.